Welcome to The Intentional Way, where literally every moment is a step towards purposeful living. I'm Bryan Hatch, here to explore the power of intention with you. Learn from our guests who embody intentionality. I'm glad you're here with me. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of The Intentional Way. I'm your host, Bryan Hatch, and as we start each one of these episodes, I get so excited about the people that I'm sitting here with. These conversations become literally like friends to me. I was just telling our guest, and I'm really excited to have someone that I've known for a long time, became close with for many years, and has just stayed connected, and I really appreciate that relationship in my life. This person is Scott Merrill. He's been doing mortgages for 22 years. He has a personal development company called MAXMO, and he has a big family and really cool things that I hope we'll get into and talk about today, but just a person that I am excited to have and introduce you to today. And I think you'll have a lot of fun as I will. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here. What came up for me when you said that we stayed connected all these years was that you created the connection with how you have been with my family and especially with my children when we're talking about life and our history and past in our home. And we talk about different experiences we had. Your name is going to come up with my voice.
So when you say that, I laugh because of the predicaments I got your boys into on occasion. So that might be a story we'll figure out at some point, but I have fond memories of your kids as well, for sure.
Yeah, there's those things that they're all growing experiences and they learn, and that was part of it. And that you are just how you are with them, how you were with them. And they are who they are in part because of your input early on in their lives. And I just am grateful for it. We are connected forever because of that, because of how you were with my kids.
Well, gosh, man, I have a true love for them. I got to spend a time with a few of your oldest boys, I should say. I'd give the shirt off my back for those kids any day.
Yeah.
Like I love, and they will never need it, but I love those guys.
Yeah, I think they experience that, and we do too.
Well, Scott, as I've introduced you a little bit here, one of my favorite things is to say is, what is something either outlandish on the edge of things, or what is something that someone's not going to find if they like look you up on social media? What's something that they might know, or it'd be interesting to know about you that they couldn't find?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and it's one I know exactly what to share with you, and maybe it'll lead into something later. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I realized my kids will talk about, well, I never knew that about you, and I just, as I gone through my life, I didn't share a lot of things because I didn't think there was value in it. And now I recognize and see how much value there can be in the way I went about my life and the experience I had and what was learned out of those experiences. And this is one I don't know. I just go through my life assuming that everybody knows everything about me, and I don't have any things that maybe might look like to somebody as being negative or bad in the past. I just assume everybody all knows it. So when I was 16, I was this kid that just went about life and doing whatever. I was always searching for one thing I wanted the most was freedom. And I was always searching for different places to get that. And you can just imagine what a kid might do to obtain some freedom. And when I was 16, the principal at the high school called me in and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I'm here because you called me in." And he's like, "No, what are you doing here at school?" I said, "Well, I'm here at school." And he goes, "Well, you hardly ever come to school. You're almost never here. You come to one class and you're a career center aide," and which is not really a class. I'm scared they're hanging out and helping.
Oh, you're the helper. You're the aide.
Yeah, exactly. So I was an aide for the career center for that 1 hour. And that says a lot about what I enjoyed in my life. And I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm unenrolling you or whatever right now." He says, "You're gone."
Wow.
Yeah. So I walked out I just said, "Okay, that's great." Got up, walked out, had my, what I thought is freedom, and we can get into that later. And I don't say this like with pride necessarily, but back at the time, it was maybe more of a second nature to me to provide him with a couple gestures as I walked out the door. And that was it. I went home, called my boss when I got home and said, "Hey, I'm available full time now." But that was something that I realized a lot of people just don't know about me.
Yeah.
I just assume they do.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That was 16. And I love how your first instinct was just call up your boss. "Hey, man, I can work now."
Yeah.
That is awesome.
It worked out. So her response to me was, "Oh, great. Okay, you have your own store. You'll start at that store in 2 weeks."
Wow. And what were you doing at the time?
A formal wear tuxedo rental company. Yeah. And so they had, I think, 10 stores around the valley, and I had a great relationship there. And yeah, so it was just, I went right into a full-time job.
Now, I'm going to ask some follow-up questions.
Ask me whatever you want.
So did you end up getting a GED? Did you
I didn't.
You're just like, "I'm done."
I went to one semester at community college and realized it just wasn't something that I didn't realize it at the time. I have to say that. I realized later as I moved through my career that it wasn't hindering me, but it definitely hindered me up here. There was always a pull of like, okay, I'm not going to have this experience. I'm not going to have that experience. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do that. And only through actually doing things differently and having that not be a factor I realized that it really wasn't a factor.
Oh, wow.
For me.
Yeah. So the thing that comes to me is, or I'm going to fast forward all of our listeners into who I know you as.
Yeah.
Right? I know few people that work as hard as you do. And I'm not saying that you're the grindstone. I'm just saying you work hard. I've seen that. I've experienced that in you in very positive ways. And recognize that you went home from this experience back then and said, let's go to work then.
Yeah.
So you said it played with your mind mentally as far as like, hey, I can't do this and I won't have that experience. I'm not going to be able to graduate. How did you learn to be the incredibly focused and hardworking man that I've known you since I met you?
It was just experience. I knew what I wanted, and I knew that in order to get what I wanted, I had to work. That's how I saw things. I took advantage of the opportunities that came to me, and I worked hard. And that was really what it was. I just knew that from a young age, I had different businesses that I'd started in the neighborhood. I just had all kinds of things I did. And I was motivated by work and the results of work, which is money, and the things I could do and the freedom that it provided for me. I didn't have to go ask my parents for anything. And I really liked that. And of course, that's how I felt at the time. I didn't have to ask them for anything. But of course, I know now that they did provide a lot for me.
Sure.
Yeah. But it was one of those things where working wasn't ever difficult for me. It was something I really wanted to do, and I was motivated by that. However, I would imagine as I assessed that, there was opportunities or things that I didn't go and pursue out of fear that this would be a hindrance or some kind of a hurdle that I may not be able to overcome. And I had a career at a major bank for 6 years, which looking back, I'm not sure how that happened without having a high school diploma, right? I created a life that I'm really happy about and love. And at a certain point, through my experiences, just taking action, that drag on my momentum, which was that thought and the feeling around not having a high school diploma or a college degree, eventually I realized through experience that it wasn't true. That thought that it was a problem, it wasn't true. And I was able to, just move forward without it.
Yeah. I love that. When I look back at the era that you were in when you didn't get a high school diploma or a college degree, I could see, this is just my perspective, recognizing that I don't see the whole of it. I could see how that would be counter to everything to the culture that we live in the valley here is like, you need it. You need a high school degree. You need a college degree in order to be successful in life. And it sounds like you proved that to yourself long ago, but it took you a while to prove it to yourself mentally.
Well, it's what you said. The voices were, hey, if you don't have a high school diploma and you don't have a college degree, you're not going to make it. You're going to be doing this or that's not appealing, or that's not going to be a desirable job. It's a dead end job or whatever it is. You're not going to make it. And those were the voices that I was hearing. And at some level, they come in, they sit there, and at some level I believed them. But I had this other part of me that was, okay, just work. And I'll share one thing with you around that was really a great blessing to me, something that was provided me with a understanding who I was and how others saw me. And also it reduced the drag that thought had on me because of this experience. So I went on a mission for my church. And at the end of my mission, I had met with my mission president, who was a CEO. He took Denny's from a fledgling little company to this massive company that it was back then. And he's sat on the board of a lot of different companies, very successful person. And at the end of my mission, we were in an interview, just talking. He said, what are you going to do when you get home? What's the plan? And so I told him, I said, hey, I want to go back and finish school. And he's like, okay, where were you going before? And I said, well, high school. And he said, what? And I told him the story. And he's like, no way. I cannot believe that. And we had a great relationship. There had been some opportunities for us to spend a lot of time together on my mission. And so he knew me pretty well. And that night, we're supposed to be in bed, I think at 9:30, maybe asleep by 10:30. He calls me and I'm worried. You get a call. The mission president calls at night. You think there's something going on. I answer the phone and he says, I'm just laying here in bed with Phyllis. It was his wife's name. He said, I'm just laying here in bed with Phyllis. And I'm telling her about our interview. I'm telling her that you didn't graduate from high school. I couldn't believe it. If you told me you'd been going to an Ivy League school and that's where you'd been going there before and that's where you were going back to, or you had already got your degree, I would have believed you. And he shared with me how he experienced me. And it was one of those things where I thought it was funny and kind of fun at the moment. And his wife's in the background, don't you worry about him. He's just teasing you. And she's thinking that it's going to make me feel bad. No, it was opposite. It actually made me feel really, it was empowering. And it was something that stuck with me, that this man who had so much experience in life and was so successful when it came to those business world and other things he was involved in, that he saw that in me. That really was useful in me going forward. It made a significant difference in my life and how I went about my life. And as I assess that now, that's the impact I can have on other people. When I share with somebody how I experience them and what they are to me and how I see them, that can move everything for them. That can move their world. It can change everything in their life. So it was a really interesting experience.
Oh man, sounds like you had a great experience there with your mission president and altering the trajectory of people's lives off of conversations like that. It may seem curious or interesting to him, your scenario, but little did he know those words carried such weight in a positive direction for you. It's something to be aware of, right?
Absolutely. Our language makes all the difference.
Yeah. The language matters. So let's talk about that for a minute. When you had these thoughts that were counterproductive to what you were proving in life, I just got to say this, it's like burning a hole in my mind right now. There are listeners out there that think that this is the way, that the path that they're on, it's the only way. When we put in context of high school, college, whatever it is, you could find dozens, if not hundreds of those examples in our life of this is the way our parents said, and this is the way the culture says, and this is the way our community and our neighborhood says that we go. And there is a way, but it doesn't always have to look the same. It doesn't have to look the same as everybody else's, so much as you understand where you're headed and where you want to go. I think that's important to say, because if anybody's listening and they feel like, oh, well, I'm not like everybody else. I'm the 1% of the 99%. I'm doing something. I didn't do this, or I didn't finish that, or I didn't do this. That doesn't have to be the hinderment. And the faster you can overcome those thoughts, the faster that can change as well for you.
I agree. I think that idea that there is a certain way, and if you're not on that path and you're not going about it that way, that is so destructive. Really can keep people from doing and becoming who they really want to become or who they could become.
So I want to get into the words matter, as you said, but I want to maybe go internal first because of your situation of having things you were dealing with mentally and needing to change that in your life. As far as I don't have this degree, I don't have these things, and so therefore I can't. Tell me, how do you change that from your mind to your mouth? How do you experience that possibility? As we're talking about intentionality, that's a very important part.
For me, I was clear about what I wanted out of my life. I was clear about the type of life that I wanted to have. I wanted a life where I could afford the things I wanted to have, and I could have a family that had the things that they needed to create productive, happy lives, and that we would, so I knew that much. Now, to suggest that I was really clear about it, no, but I knew that much. And so I knew that there was in order to get there, there were certain things that I needed to do and a person I needed to be. And I headed down that path. And so even though the thoughts would come up, and I refer to it as drag or unuseful thoughts or whatever you want to call it, things are just holding me back, I knew enough. I was clear about the goal enough. And I knew that what actions I needed to take. So I kept going down that path. And I don't know if there's at that, early on in my life or, in those first, say, 15 years of my marriage or so, that I was that aware of what was going on. It was just grinding it out. It was just putting the work in. And then through experience, recognizing that, okay, this is working. I can get where I want to go, even though I don't have this or that, or this thing's holding me back. It was really grinding it out. And it's really not until in the last, say, 10 or 15 years that I became more aware of that. And my progress has been, I would say, exponential. I live much more efficiently. I'm more effective in how I go about things. And when I become more aware of what those thoughts were doing to me, and I'm able to transcend them or disregard them, whatever you want to call it.
So you're alluding to the fact that even now, while it might be different, there are thoughts that you're managing and finding, or at least labeling, you said, as not useful. And that's part of how you're allowing your words matter. You're getting back to the phrase you said. So take us on a little journey there in today's age. From where you told us you came from to where you are today, there's a chasm. Just to reiterate what you said, you weren't clear on all the detailed bullet points of what it was, but you're clear on two things as I experienced what you said, is you're clear on the commitment it took or the amount of work that you needed to put in. You were clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
And you weren't wavering in that. I think that's a way that you were in that scenario. But as we relate it back to the words and how those words matter, if we have thoughts now, take us through how you're doing that now. You said after the last 10, 15 years, you've been really focusing in on this in a different way. So tell us, how are you finding a way to alter those thoughts that are causing drag, that are not useful? How are you overcoming those as opposed to letting them pull you back?
Yeah. The way I would explain it is I'm much more clear about what I want to create, what I want my life to look like. And the clearer I am, the easier it is to let all those things that unnecessary, unuseful thoughts, drag, whatever you want to call it, to transcend those. And I think that's the biggest key for me, is being clear what that outcome is. So I'll just maybe an example from what happened today. In fact, when I was telling you when I came here, I'm like, hey, I called my wife, and my wife has this business. She rents cars out. She has 20 cars. And it's usually a matter of, I just ask her what car I need to drive or what car I can take, and she tells me which one to take. Well, I called her up and I said, hey, I'm going to Bryan's. I need a car. Which one should I take? She said, honey, you don't have a car. They're all rented. And I was like, oh. So my first thought was initial irritation, right? Honey, man, I got something going on here. You knew I was going to go do this podcast. How come I don't have a car, right? You rented all of our cars out. We don't have anything. And that's my initial thought. And in the moment, I got clear about what I want. Well, one of the things I want is her to have a successful business, which means renting all the cars as often as possible. I know she's working really hard at this business, and she's putting a lot of effort into it right now, and this is the season for that. And I know that's what she's doing. I know she puts immense amount of hours and energy expending to make it so that all of her cars are rented, right? And also tonight, I want to be with my wife in a way where we enjoy each other. I want to go out with her and have a fun time, enjoy her. So I got really clear with that. That was the outcome. That is what I'm looking for in my life right now and tonight. And I could get all irritated, and I could tell her, you got to think of me, whatever, all the thoughts that might come up, and probably would have 5-10 years ago. But I got clear about that. That isn't in alignment with what I'm looking to create with her. And so then it's, okay, I get it. Well, what can I do? I could take an Uber. Anyway, we went through and figured out a solution to where I could get here.
Yeah.
So I think it's being as clear as possible about what I want and what I'm looking to create. And the clearer I am, the easier it is to push those thoughts out quickly, transcend them, move on from them.
Anybody listening, if you don't recognize the gold you just heard, I'm going to break it down. I think it's important to break it down. So I don't think that most people operate their lives that way. And I'm not saying there aren't many. I'm saying that just most. The majority doesn't operate that way. Typically, how we operate is what comes in our mind first. The reactionary, I'm upset about this. You knew I was going to have this appointment. How could you rent out the cars so that I can get to that? As you said, I don't need to say the exact things you did, but that's how we operate typically, is we just run through life on whatever comes. Like, you were mean, so I'm going to tell you why you're mean, and then I'm going to go to the next thing, and then when that happens, I'm going to react to that thing, and it just goes, right? Whereas you are conscious enough, and this is the definition of intentionality, is you were aware enough in the moment that when your wife said, no cars, good luck. In essence, I know your wife, she's awesome.
Yeah.
But in essence, like, hey, nothing. Like, you got, I don't know, talk to a neighbor? I don't know. But either way, you were present enough to what you actually wanted with your wife, which is a great relationship, that you want to be able to enjoy one another's company today, let alone tomorrow and the next day and the next month. And so you allowed those thoughts to be what you focused on, And so then that overcame the drag or that unnecessary frustration, because it just is a thing.
Yeah.
It just is.
Mhm.
There's not a car for you to take. Okay. So I was just breaking that down in a way for our audience because they heard it from you, but I wanted to have them understand that is the best way I could ever explain intentionality. It's understanding what you want and then foregoing, sacrificing something that doesn't matter for what you want in the way that you just explained.
Yeah, I hear that, and I agree with that. I would say add one thing to that is I am intentional about when I make a commitment that I'm going to keep that commitment. And so a little bit of what came up there was in the moment, frustration about, man, I made this commitment to Bryan. I got to be there. I got to be there on time. How am I going to get an Uber or whatever am I going to do to get there on time? And then the thought hit me, well, if you were that committed, you would have worked this out last night and you would have been clear that you had a car. And again, it's not a normal thing that I don't have any car. I mean, at some point I'm going to have a car. But that came up for me is that's me being loose with my commitment to you. And in the moment, I knew that I was going to do whatever it took. If I had to go get a neighbor's car, which somewhat in essence I did, or do an Uber, whatever it was, I was going to be here.
Yeah, I love it. That's such a poignant example of what I was after, is to understand how are you putting it into play today when we talked about some of your big life goals. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe, follow, and download our episode. Your support allows us to bring more intentional guests just like this, and it means the world to us. Now, let's get back to the episode. So Scott, I'm interested to know more about MAXMO. Explain the methodology, where this concept came from. I've heard you talk about it, but I want our listeners to understand a little more about MAXMO.
The origin story of MAXMO would be, or it is, that I was looking for a program to help my clients progress in their financial lives. And I was looking to more so in how to accumulate multiple homes and have rental properties and momentum was one of those things I considered as I thought about that. How do you create momentum in that? And it's buying one and then slowly just get to a point where you have momentum where you can increase maybe 2 homes in a year as opposed to just 1, and then 3 homes in a year for the next, and it grows. So I was thinking about that and I thought, okay, you want to reach maximum momentum. And I came up with this combination of maximum momentum and shortened it to MAXMO. And over time, that didn't really come together as I was thinking. But over time, I realized I had been using MAXMO as my own, in my mind, just developing it as my own truly my personal improvement program. And I hadn't been sharing it much with anybody. I just been kind of developing in my mind. Maybe I'd say something to my wife every once in a while or my kids. And I came to a point where I recognized that and I thought, oh, maybe there's something there. Because I'd tell myself, all right, I'm moving into a situation where I need to be pumped up and ready to go. I need to be on my game. And I would say, all right, go MAXMO, live MAXMO, do it. And I was just using that in my mind. And that was for quite a few years, that was the case. And I'd keep notes on it and just write thoughts I had about it down. And we went through a summer where there was some tragedies and difficult situations that our family experienced. And it was really significant at the time. And I came home from dealing with those situations and I was at my desk in my mortgage company, in my office there. And I found myself just sitting at the wall, staring there for about 3 hours, just totally zoned out, staring at the wall, trying to figure out, because there were some things that still need to be handled regarding these other situations. Mm-hmm. And it just weighed on me. And I was sitting there staring at the wall. And I started thinking about what a friend of ours who had lost their daughter during that same time to an illness. And I was thinking about them and thinking about their lives and how they were going about things. And I wondered how they were going to get through that. And I started just assessing their lives and everything I could to learn to kind of pull out of what they were doing to find lessons that I could use for what I was going through. And I saw it. I just saw that they had created these lives where their relationships were strong, their business, they had been really intentional about their business and growing a business that was I wouldn't say it was a large business, but it was big enough to keep things going without the attention of our friend at that time. They were in good health. They had so many things going for them. And a thought came to me, they couldn't stop if they wanted to. They have so much momentum that even if they wanted to, they couldn't quit. With all that they were feeling, the immense amount of pain and sadness that they were feeling, that they were going to continue to grow. And that's the difference between somebody who has a tragedy or experiences something in their life that's difficult and they hit a wall and everything falls apart, and those who progress and grow through it. And that's a thought came to my mind in that moment. That's Maximo. That's it. It's about living a life in a way that has you to be able to progress and grow regardless of what's going on, regardless of the environment, regardless of what's happening around you, being intentional enough about your actions, daily actions, that has you be in a place where you can't quit if you want to.
That's awesome. Now, the scenario where you're staring at the wall for 3 hours, was that a common occurrence when challenges came up, you kind of zoned in, worked on some things, or is this like a turning point, like you hadn't done something quite like that before? It sounds pretty significant.
Yeah, I would say that there was times when I get down or bummed out or a little bit distracted by things and have some times where I'm zoning out, just trying to figure things out. This was different in a way where I was completely gone. Like mentally, I couldn't even tell you. I know it was 3 hours. It was a significant amount of time,
Yeah.
but I couldn't tell you even what I thought in that time until I kind of woke up. And I wasn't really sleeping, but I just was mentally asleep. And until I came to the realization that I had been sitting there that long staring at the wall, I don't even know what happened prior to that. I don't even know what I was thinking.
I still find it interesting though, if I can contrast some of the things that I've seen personally in other relationships I have, where sometimes things go wrong or something goes in a difficult situation in our lives, and people numb out in a way that they find something else that distracts them from it. And I think it's interesting that while you said you still woke up from this 3-hour situation, but you were actually thinking of it, as opposed to, you could have done a million things that would have distracted you. There's a million movies, a million activities. You could have gone golfing. You could have done 100 things that would have just had you thinking about something else, as opposed to thinking about the things that, as you explained. Recognize that those are sensitive, but what made you do that? I just think a lot of people will pick ways out that are just numb. Why did you do that?
Well, I can tell you exactly what. I had a life that I had created, and I was still aware that this wasn't the end. It was significant. It was a roadblock or hurdle, whatever. There was some, but I knew, we would work through it. And I still was committed to my life and committed to my wife and committed to my children. And I had responsibilities. I needed to keep going. So in a way, what I created around there was the momentum that was pushing me. I had the momentum. I was in a similar circumstance as this other person, but I couldn't see it in me. I could see it in them, but I couldn't see it in me. But when now looking back and assessing it, I had that momentum. I had the same thing. I had these relationships that were strong. They were powerful. I had businesses. I had things I was about in life, and they were pushing me to keep going and to stay awake to it. So I knew I couldn't just check out. That wasn't an option for me. That wasn't something that had crossed my mind of just checking out. And so when I recognized that I had checked out for a few hours, that was really an eye-opener to me. That in itself was enough to teach me or to help me to see some things. And so I went in to find, okay, how do I prevent this from being a regular everyday or maybe an everyday situation? And so looking into that's where the answers came. Those answers came by looking and assessing what I was going through in the moment. And I knew that there had to be an answer out there, because I'm looking at my friend going, hey, how do these guys they're still going, right? How do I do that? And so it was looking inside during that moment of pain and suffering and being able to find the answer in that. And it was one of the most profound moments of my life.
Why was it so profound?
Because I became aware of who I was being. And we have this idea and concept sometimes that there's something wrong with us, that we're different. Like you referenced earlier on in our conversation about, oh yeah, I'm the exception.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not. I'm not the exception. I have that in me to keep going. I saw that. I was able to see it going, okay, there's this person who's doing it. I can see that now, and I'm not going to fall apart. I'm going to now go do more intentionally what he's doing. I'm going to be more aware of it now. And it was a wake-up call, if you will, where my mind was expanded and open to possibility that I need to do or what I ought to do to be able to grow and continue to get where I want to be. So I look back, and maybe in the moment I didn't see it as profound, but now looking back and assessing it, it was profound. It was a point that launched me into a whole new way of going about my life. Totally different.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Now that you've had that experience and you started progressing with Maximo, you've got the concept, you've been playing with it for years, and now you have an example of it. What did you do at that point moving forward with what Maximo is?
I just began to share it more with people that I worked with, people in my family members, and just other people I came in contact with, and just share it in a way that would have people be able to recognize the power of momentum and how significant that is, that it really is a force. And it's a force that can help us to grow through anything. And I see everything in that way now. I see it in momentum and drag. And that's how I see everything. It just comes that oh, that's drag, that's momentum. And I can make choices based on drag or momentum because it's one or the other. Everything I do every day is either going to create momentum or create drag. And even that could be just sleeping in or staying in my bed longer. Well, that's drag. It might not seem that way, but it's drag in some way. Or if I haven't slept well and I need to get some more sleep, well, that could be momentum because it's creating a place where I'm going to be able to move forward more efficiently throughout the day because I'm not going to be tired. So I just look at everything in that way and just sharing it with people more in different ways. We created some apparel and different things like that we sell, and we're working on some other things to be more effective at that. But coaching and training, that's my primary thing. I love to share and teach about it. And I have some clients that I coach with around it and call momentum coach. And I have to explain that usually what that means to people, but helping people to be able to access the idea is for them to identify, target, and then share the momentum that they have. And it really is everything. So I'll just give an example of what that would mean for me today. So here, we're sitting here. I know by nature of this, who you are and what you've created and my experience of you and what we're doing here, that there is going to be momentum created and it's being created right now. So I can identify that. I can already sense it. We talked about when you sit down and have a conversation with somebody, you're over there learning so many things that are happening right now. Whatever's going on in your mind, you're learning something and it's created. That's momentum. You have now a new insight or a new understanding. I have that too. So I'm identifying it. And now when I leave here, I can target that. So I can target that into a way of, in this conversation, I recognize that whatever it was, and I'm going to go target now, use the momentum I have to create a plan around something new that I came up with. And it could be just like recording notes about something so I can use them later, but I'm going to use that momentum I have when I leave here to do something. I'm going to target it. Or I could target into another area. So for example, I could call my wife when I get done and I could use that momentum to improve my relationship with her or upgrade my relationship with her or one of my children. Hey, I just was over at Bryan's house and I did this podcast and here's what I experienced there. And I'd love to talk to you more about it. You want to go to lunch, son? Let's go meet for lunch next week. And I want to share that more about you. Well, that just is momentum that I use to upgrade my relationship with one of my children. And then the other would be to share it. So I can use what I've had here and through those conversations with my wife or my child, could be sharing it as well. And I could get them, create some more momentum in them to have them be progressing and growing into whatever they want to use. And they'll feel it, they'll use it, and I'll help them to identify it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I see the value in the idea of Maximo and momentum. It's everywhere and how to use it.
One of the things you said that I loved is when you were assessing this other family and what they were doing, maybe you had discussed the man in the family, but either way, this family, how they were running through these challenges. You said they had momentum. They couldn't stop if they wanted to. So how do you gain that? How do you gain momentum that pushes you when you don't want to push? Meaning you can't really stop. It's moving. This huge wave is coming behind you. It's going to keep going.
How do you create it so that it is that powerful for you? Awareness, I think, is number one, is the most important thing. It's being aware of what's happening, being aware of what is going on in your mind, assessing those thoughts, determining what's true and what's not, which majority aren't, and being aware of how you're feeling and why you're doing what you're doing. That's the number one thing. But when it comes to then doing something about it, so when you're looking to create a life, maximal life is what I would refer to it as, is being intentional about the areas in your life and what you're doing. So the first and primary core domains that I see as the most important areas to concentrate on or be intentional about is learning. So not just learning, but being open to seeking understanding. And that could be seeking to understand yourself, understand others, understand new things about money or about life, our world, whatever. Just be always open to learning, never being satisfied with, okay, I know enough or I got it. I don't need to do that. But that is number one. Number two would be health, and that would include physical and mental health. Those are the most important things. The next thing would be relationships. Our relationships are so powerful. Those other things are important, but I think from an idea of like the greatest source of momentum, something that can really keep us going and pushing us and pulling us, would be the relationships we have. And then the last thing would be related to financial. And so I see that being intentional about those areas, and it doesn't require a lot of effort. When you get clear about it and you get things going, I mean, I could turn around and create something really quick in those areas. You could start to make momentum if you're faltering in those areas, just as long as you're aware of it and you're intentional about it. You could go from being over here, like on the momentum scale, if this was even, you could be over here and things are kind of going the wrong way. Just a thought could have you shift to being right here. And you could start to make the progress almost immediately in just your thoughts. That creates momentum. And then you take the actions and you add on top of that, you really start going and you could change everything. So when somebody say you can change your life, you could change your life. Literally, you can change your life in a moment if you choose to, and if you're aware of it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you said was that it doesn't take a lot of effort, or at least that's how I heard it. Maybe not what you said. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It sounds like it doesn't require a lot to make the change now. There is effort in the changing, but like you said, you could be feeling horrible and decide to not feel horrible in a split second. Your circumstances haven't changed. The things that have happened to you have not changed at all. Yet you can feel different about those immediately if you choose. If you don't choose, or if you're resisting that, then, that's the drag you might be speaking of. But am I clarifying that right?
Yeah, that's exactly how I would say it. There is effort involved, but it doesn't take a lot of effort. But the hard part is like, okay, you're sitting there on the couch, eating some chips or whatever, watching a movie, and you're feeling really poorly about your health. And you could be sitting there having a thought about it. You could have a thought of, I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I doing this? I ought to be, or I need to be going and doing this. I should do this. I should do that. And in a moment, but we don't see it that way. We don't see how easy it is. Like literally we could change our lives by just putting those chips away, standing up, walking outside. I mean, you really think about that going, that is the change of your life just by putting chips away and standing up and walking outside, or just standing up and walking around your house. But we don't see it that way. We just think we got to have one of the phrases that I kind of despise because it's misunderstood is massive action. It feels so heavy to people and they feel like they got to go on. It's going to requires a lot of energy and it's going to be draining. And I understand the concept behind it, but on just the words massive action create a feeling of, like I said, heaviness and just weighing me down. You're right. When I see is creating momentum is just making just a small shift, and a small shift can change everything in that moment.
Yeah. I think when I've heard massive action or 10x or do these amazing things, they're great theories, and there's some preventativeness in those pieces of language. Like, oh, I'm sitting here eating chips, watching a movie, and what I should be doing is I should run to the gym and I should be at the gym for 4 hours. And then after that, I'm going to go crush it in work. It's like everything has to be so big. And while great, if you can muster like jumping off your couch, eating chips to running to the gym, sweet, dude. Like that could be a massive action in that sense. Or it could be a small action to change your life. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think, could you do that every day? Right? What I see when it comes to being intentional for me and creating momentum, it's the consistency in it. That's where the change happens. And that's where the significant growth occurs, is the consistency of it. Yeah, I could go out and do something once like that, but man, am I going to be able to keep that up? So there was a time I remember laying in bed one morning, just going, feel horrible. I don't even want to get out of bed. I'm just so tired and worn out, and just my health was horrible. And I said, okay, this just thought, I'm going to get up and I'm just going to start. I'm going to do something. So I got up out of my bed. I did one jumping jack. I did one air squat, one sit up, one push up, and then 1 second of planking. And I just did that. And I thought, okay, that was enough. And I didn't push myself to do anything else. And the next day I said, I'm going to do the same thing. So what I did was I did that the next day and the next day and the next day. And then I did up to 3 weeks. So it took me 3 weeks just to do 3. And I could do more. I got to a point where I could do more, but I was just, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work I'm just going to do what I need to do every day and just see where it goes, and only do what I have to do. And I know I'm not like a big fan of those have to's and needs to's now, but at the time, that's the way I thought. And so I did. And so then I skipped to 10, and then I grew up to where I was doing 167 every single day in a row of all of those things.
Oh,
167. And it was just a really powerful experience for me to teach me the power of momentum. And I remember telling a friend about this, and he says, "You really just got out of your bed and you just did 1?" And he goes, "Do you know how stupid that sounds? How ridiculous that is?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, and guess what? I kind of actually started thinking that myself a little bit. That kind of came up on my mind. So then I went and hid in my closet, and I started doing it in there because I was just doing so few. And I was embarrassed by it. And who would have saw me? My wife, and she doesn't care. But I was just so in my mind had created this, like, this is silly. This is waste. You're weak. You could do more. Why aren't you doing more? And then my friend said, "Man, it sounds so silly and stupid, but it's so inspiring." And it really was just a powerful example to me of what can be created just by taking a small step based on even just a thought. And over time, just keep going. Just be consistent and be aware and keep going.
yeah. I like it. Acting on it matters. So there's the action, but in addition to that, like you said, the consistency. I can't define momentum without consistency, right?
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
there's no way to do it to say I did it once and then I was just crushing everything. Like there is a consistency. How do you find other places in your life to do that same thing? Health is a phenomenal example. I think it's really great. How have you done that with other things?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You can really take that and apply any of those domains I talked about. I can do that. So I have a regimen or whatever I follow, just a plan every day of things I'm going to learn. And so I spend time studying and learning about different things. I have a goal every year to learn something that's requires more attention and intention. And so that's in that area. Where I find it to be able to be most, like, where I can change something in a moment is in my relationships. And where I see it really powerfully manifested is in relationships. So if I wake up in the morning and I might in the past have just gone up and gone about my business and done my thing. If I grab my wife and I tell her how much I love her and I tell her what she means to me, or I whisper in her ear the things that she would be inspired by or feel loved by me, hey, I whisper in her, "You're the greatest car rental host ever. You are the most loving mother and grandmother." And that changes in a moment. A few words changes everything for her in that moment. And it does for me too. And so I see that going, if I'm consistent about that, when I am consistent about that, my relationship with my wife is deep and powerful. And I see it in a way where there's nothing that we can't overcome. We all have challenges in our lives.
Yeah.
But my experience of my wife is, and this is different than it was 5 years ago. When we first got married, it was like, not, hey, if we get divorced, it was like, no, when are we getting divorced? And I would say that was probably for the first few years of our marriage. And over time, it kind of got into life and move along and work things out and kind of be able to navigate life and challenges. But I can tell you now that when we are both being intentional and consistent about our relationship, that it's created a relationship that I don't see anything stopping that. I don't see that anything, there's gonna be lots of things come up, and I'm aware that life goes and things come up and we don't always, but that's our experience of our relationship right now. And it's because we are being so consistent about it. One of my daughters, I had a experience in a group that I was in, and one of the guys in the group said something about how he said, "My dad is the most loving person. Every time my dad is in anybody's presence, everybody just feels loved." And the way he described it was so powerful to me, and it just hit in a way where I'm like, that is what I want. I want my children to feel that from me. And I hadn't been that way. I've been really loose about how I was. I was an okay dad and just kind of did my thing, and I love my kids, but it wasn't like, I don't think that they would ever say that. I want them to feel that. I don't care if they say it, but I want them to feel it. And I determine what things do I need to do with each child to have them feel that. And it's a work in progress. But one of the things with one of my oldest daughter was, who's married and has a couple children of her own, and she, whenever she would come over, was whatever I was doing, if I was aware that she was there, I was going to stand up, go see her, hug her, tell her how much I love her, and tell her kids that, and be with each one of them individually, looking in their eyes and telling them what I felt about them. And then I could go about whatever. If I was in the middle of something else, I could excuse myself and go do that. But I can tell you, Bryan, that has created the most powerful and one of the most fulfilling relationships of my life with my daughter. It has changed everything for both of us. And it's something that I never knew or never thought that I could have a relationship that powerful with one of my children. It is one of the greatest blessings of my life. And I'm working on that, creating that with my other children too. It just happened to be that with this particular daughter in this particular time, things were such that it was, I would say, I could sense that we were more off than with some of the others, that we weren't in alignment. And that she wasn't experiencing fully how I felt about her as my daughter. And by taking those consistent steps every day, and if I'm aware of it, I walk her out to her car and say goodbye to the kids. I have a habit of doing that with most people anyway, but for her, it was being really intentional about that. And it's something that I really enjoy, and the kids enjoy it, she enjoys it. And it's been something that's created a relationship. And there's a lot more in between that, but it's being consistent about those actions that has really created this amazing, fulfilling relationship. And I love it.
What I'm hearing you say is, going back to one of the other phrases you said, it doesn't take a lot. None of the things you just explained in the examples you shared are mind-numbing, crazy, hard to do. But it's those small and simple and little things that, when done consistently, applied consistently, make all the difference. I think that's what I love about intentionality at a whole, is that it requires effort, but it doesn't have to be the hardest thing you've ever done. It doesn't have to be this like, oh man, I don't even know if I'm ready for that. It can be, I'm going to just make sure that my daughter and her kids are connected in a way that's meaningful. What would that take? 30 seconds each? A minute each?
Yeah.
Maybe? And so doing those things consistently, how that makes such a huge difference and impact, that is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the key in it, is we have these ideas that we have to do so much and it requires so much time and energy and effort. It doesn't. I mean, that is such a simple, it sounds so simple, but what it's created is so massive. And that's, if you want to use the word massive, that's the massive. Is what it creates.
It's a massive
simple
outcome.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, a massive outcome out of just being consistently intentional.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
The one thought that comes up for me in that is that I also see that when I'm intentional about things, so that is just being intentional about how I'm being with my daughter and her children as well, because she sees that as connected to, and I love them and I would be intentional with them anyway, but it's important for me to be with them so she also sees how much I love her children, and that helps build my relationship with her too. But what I see in that is that what comes up for me in that is that being consistently intentional creates the possibility of exponentiality. So our relationship, when I'm speaking to my daughter, and similar thing with my wife, is we were going along and it's growing, but then at some point it took this massive jump. That's the exponential growth. It just went boom. And had I not been being consistently intentional, that exponential growth would have never occurred. It would have been ups and downs probably of relationship, and it could have been on an upward trajectory, right?
Yeah.
But there is a time when it became this exponential, that it just took off. And I would never have that opportunity had I not been consistently intentional. And the same thing I can see in business. So you're consistent about doing certain things, or I've been in my business, and then at time, what I actually refer to as a momentum booster kind of hits, or a momentum boost. And there's something that's unusual that occurs, but it would never have occurred, or would have never been in the place had I not been consistently intentional about that space.
I love it. The consistency and the intentionality of just doing the small and simple things. I think that those things are so easy to pass up. They're so easy because they're so simple. That's part of the reason why I think it's hard to do, or at least We make it feel hard to do because if I go say hi to my daughter and I talk to her kids, like that's not making a difference. Like that instant doubt is the drag that you speak of, is the instant thing that's going to pull away from what actually you want. And the consistency is what can create that maximum momentum, if you will, those momentum boosters. That's a really cool thing. Opportunities come to those that are ready and prepared. Opportunities come for those that aren't, but if you're consistent, those are big changes.
Yeah, and we're more likely to see them because we're in it. We're more likely to recognize them when they come about. Sometimes opportunities come and we don't see what's there because we're not being aware to how we're being and how we're acting and what we're doing. And it's much more likely to see it when it comes about, when we're being consistent and intentional about how we're being.
One question comes to me is, how do you become aware? Because I think that the way of just going through life, there's a lot that goes on. I'm at least at minimum sympathetic, if not empathetic, that a lot of things happen. There's a lot of this and that and the kids and the wife and the whatever listeners, whatever your life is like, right? There's a lot going on. It's not like most people are just sitting around and 24 hours a day, just like sitting on their couch. There's stuff that's happening. So how do you become aware of those small opportunities as opposed to let them pass you by? Because if you're not looking for them, I don't think they appear very easily.
I think it's about when you become aware of them. So one of the things I can see is that when I'm focused on something and I know what outcome I want to create, I can start heading down that path. And I think the focus is important. But what is probably equally as important is to be, here's what I want to do, and what are the distractions to that? What things can derail this focus or keep me from getting to that place? And you have to spend the time in it and look at it and go, okay, if I want to go on a date with my wife tonight, want to have a good time with her, okay, well, this thought of like being upset because I don't have a car to go to this appointment I have, I got to be aware enough that is going to derail what I really want to create over there. So I have to look at that, just being aware of those things, being aware of the things that might deter or distract or derail my focus or distract from it. I think the distraction key thing is just as important as the focus, is being aware of those distractions. And I don't think you can do it without just being clear about where you want to go and being really committed to that. When you're really committed and clear about where you want to go, you'll spend the time looking at things that could get in your way. And then when things come up, I'm like, oh, hold on. That's something that is going to get in my way.
Yeah.
That is going to be drag on this momentum. Yeah, I'm not going to go there.
So how do you get clear on those things then? Because I have a few relationships in my life that they have told me recently, or not just consistently, oh man, if I just had a week off of everything else, I could get all these things done that I want to figure out all my priorities and get clear on this. If I just could take a week off of everything else and do this. So what's a quick or simple or your way of getting clear on those things? Because you're clear that I want to have a great time with my wife tonight. I just don't think that people are thinking that way commonly. When they're on the phone with their wife for the car situation, they're not thinking about the date night.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a few hours away, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the next 12 seconds, typically. So what's the process to get clear?
For me, I'd say that the process of getting clear about it, spending the time, seeing what it is where I want to go, what it's going to take to get there, identifying again, those things that could be drag or distractions, and just trying it out. Looking at it going, okay, I'm going to take some action towards that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I actually take action towards something, I start to realize, oh, it's not as big as I thought it was going to be. It's not going to be as consuming as I thought. Or it's not going to take as much energy as I thought or time as I thought. And so I'm going to start taking some action towards that. And the action is momentum, which then creates momentum if we allow it to, and we keep going. And it helps us move down a path. Then we realize that, oh, okay, I can do this. I can do this and I can do that. I can do this and I can do this and that too. Because the progress that comes from small steps is more significant than what we think. And it changes our mindset and helps us to recognize that, oh, okay, this isn't that big of a deal. I can do it. And then I can stop. And so then next time, maybe it's the next day, for example, just using like a project you had in mind, maybe somebody's got to do their taxes. They don't want to engage in it. So they start heading down the path. Okay, I can get this done. Man, I've made a lot of progress on this. And I need to stop because I have to go, I have another commitment. So then the next day, a lot easier to go pick up that task again and start working on it. So I don't know if that answers your question fully, but I think that it just builds on itself, and it's just taking the initial step leads to the next step.
Yeah. Well, if I can add a little bit to it, I think that to get clear about those things, maybe taking away that massiveness of things. Going back to my example, if I just had a week off of everything else, I could do all these things and get clear on these things. Well, just pick one thing to get clear on today then.
Yeah.
Be clear about whatever the thing is. You might have a million things you want to get clear on. Sweet. Well, let's focus on 1, 2, and figure out what that looks like, the clarity in that. And then from there, you can start moving with those little actions, those little steps, and creating consistent effort, right? Don't make it overwhelming. You said it can change in an instant. So just focus on one thing then. There might be multiple things you want to improve in your life. Great. Get clear on one and then decide on what that small action is you're going to take and do it. And then get clear on other things.
Yeah, and I do. I think that's the key. I think it's just about doing something, taking some action, and then being aware of what action you took and then build on that. If I have a commitment to one of my children to have them feel more loved by me, and I see them one time and I really clear with them and I take 10 seconds just to tell them what I think about or how I feel about them and hug them and love them or whatever it is. If I just let that be, it has an impact. It was useful and helpful.
Yeah.
But I can see it going, oh, that didn't take very long for him to feel that way, or for me to express or to do what I wanted to do, or start down that process or start down that path of him feeling more loved by me. And so the next day, build on that, or whatever it is, whatever, maybe it's making a phone call or sending a text or whatever the next day. Things really make a big difference.
Yeah.
Small actions make a big difference.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Well, Scott, what thing have we left out or not discussed that you feel like is necessary to our conversation here?
The one thing I guess I would want people to know is that regardless of where they are and regardless of where they've come from, that there is a way to get to where they want to be. And when you head down the path and you start taking action in that and start doing what we just talked about, one step here, one step there, and just kind of start navigating it, that momentum is created by that. It's there. It's happening. Use it. Be aware of it. When you have a thought or feeling that's useful, act on it. If we're sitting here or I'm sitting at my desk and I have a thought about somebody, Bryan Hatch, for example, and I'm like, you know what? I really like that guy. I'm really grateful for him and what he's done for my family. Well, I'm going to send you a text and tell you that's what I'm thinking. And sometimes I'm not aware of that often, but sometimes I am. And when I am being really intentional and being aware of who I want to be and what I want others to experience and what I'm looking to create in my life, then to take action on that, I find it so simple. And the impact is so significant.
And maybe my last button I'd put in our conversation is just simply the relationships, putting that at the top of the list. If there's any place to get intentional or clear, start there of something that you want in a relationship and move toward. If you're having trouble like prioritizing what you want to do, because most of your examples have been connected to a human being, like a relationship they have with you, and that's super impactful.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. You want to be able to test this out and try it out. A relationship is the great way to try it out. Like you go about that and being intentional with a person, you can see how a few moments of your time have impact that relationship in a significant way. And I think that one of the things that holds us back from doing it, again, is our thoughts. And it might be, okay, this is uncomfortable or weird or different. But that's when you work through that, then it becomes normal and natural. Everything's always, when you're first doing it, uncomfortable or it might feel that way. And you might have some thoughts around what that other person thinks. There was a time when I would literally grab my wife every day and had some things I would share with her, whisper them in her ear. And I kind of referenced that earlier. And it was a little uncomfortable for me at the beginning. It was uncomfortable because they were true and there were things I wanted her to know. And I wanted her to know how I felt about her and who she was being and what she could create in the world. And then over time, being out of town or whatever, different things came up and it kind of dissipated. And I had no idea until she told me how significant that was for her and what an impact that had in her life and who she was being. And in a relationship, even though it was uncomfortable for me, and maybe a little uncomfortable for her at the beginning, she's like, what's going on here? The consistency is what made it not uncomfortable anymore. It became comfortable. It became powerful. It became something that was literally having a massive impact in my wife's life and in our relationship.
It's those small and simple actions. And as we do those consistent things, we become the person that makes a huge impact. And back to some of the things you said, is those small moments. You've mentioned a few of them along the way of your life that have made a huge difference in the way that you saw yourself and the way that you just created in your life. And I love that. So Scott, thanks for sharing all that you have. I'm excited for the comments and all that comes from this episode. So thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Grateful for it.
Thank you for joining us on The Intentional Way. I'm Bryan Hatch, and it's been a true privilege to share this time with you. If today's episode has inspired you in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe, follow, and download our episodes. Your support not only helps us grow, it also enables us to bring more insightful conversations and exceptional guests right to you. Living intentionally begins with a single step, yours. So let's make the most of it. Until next time, seek intention by being completely present.